Well, hey there everyone, welcome on into VG Emporium, video game music and more. I am the proprietor of this fine establishment and your host, Rage Cage. And today we're going to be focusing on a sound chip that I encountered when I was a small child and it took me nearly about 25 years to come to truly appreciate. And that being the YM2413 OPLL Budget FM sound chip. And as to why it's called the Budget sound chip, I'll be learning you that in a bit. Suffice to say, when in the right hands, this humble little chip can sound amazing. So now, as I mentioned, I encountered the sound chip in my very early, probably about 5 or 6, in my first console that I actually owned, the Sega Master System, which somehow, someway, even it had the FM sound chip in there when this was not supposed to be in the U.S. And if you'd like to learn more about that, I did a whole episode about it called Episode 35, Sega Master System Memories. But you can imagine, hearing that and be like, oh, cool, but then my friends having Sega Genesis and, SNES and all, and then those sounding amazing, and it was like, what I got don't sound too good. So then it took about, like I said, 25 years or so for me to fully, truly appreciate that sound chip because, yeah, there's amazing things that can be done with it when, like I said, in the right hands. So, speaking of which, this song that we came in on with, which is called Opening Theme, from Greatest Driver, and this was composed by Shigeru Tomita. There is another composer connected to the soundtrack, Kazunori Hasegawa, though this song was specifically composed by Shigeru Tomita. And how am I so confident in saying that? That's because I kind of went a little obsessed about this guy's music when I first discovered Super Highlight on the Sega Genesis, that soundtrack, and actually did a whole episode about it and the game that it was a remaster of, Highlight 3 on the NEC PC, and that is episode 45, Highlight 2 for 1. And in it, I tell you as much as I could find about Shigeru Tomita. Definitely go check it out. It's one of my favorite episodes, just mostly because I got to listen to a lot more of Super Highlight. But we're here to talk about Greatest Driver and the music right here. And, gotta say, Shigeru got the OPLL singing. Because for anyone that's familiar with this sound chip and, its preset sounds, they can sound a little cheesy. And, there's some things on it that sound really cheesy, like Alex Kidd in The Lost Stars. But here, he's using them to make this kind of really a dramatic, emotional sound, and, like, some of the patches not sounding like how they usually do. Like, I think it's either, like, a combination of volume and, patch combinations. Possibly. I don't know. It's something that I've been trying to learn myself when writing music for this sound chip, because most of the times I'm just kind of using them straight, but, like, listening to this and the other songs we're going to be hearing today, it's really kind of giving me some ideas. But before we move on, you may want to know a bit about this game. So GD Greatest Driver is a F1 racing game developed by T&E Soft, most famously known for developing many a golf game as well as the Highlight series, and it was released on the MSX2. And the viewpoint is from behind the car as opposed to overhead, and it looks really good for, like, 1988 8-bit computer. But the cool thing is the HUD for it. On the side it shows information about your car, like, how some of your parts are doing, as well as on the bottom part shows all your gauges such as temperature, fuel, the speed you're going, as well as your gear. And that's about all I got for you. Someone who could tell you more about this are the boys at Pixelated Audio, because they did a whole episode about this game and its soundtrack. That would be episode 54 of Pixelated Audio. And definitely go check it out because, they talk about the whole soundtrack as well as some of the PSG versions of it. Alright, so moving on to our next track. The next one I got is maybe not sounding as cool as this one, but still is really good. This is Cave from Phantasy Star. And this was composed by Takuhiko Uwabo. That was Cave from Phantasy Star, composed by Takuhiko Uwabo. Uwabo! And yeah, this may not be as impressive as that opening track from GD with its uses of the patches, but still, it's really well composed, really catchy, and I could listen to this on repeat, which I have, because I've been recently playing the M2 release of this game on the Switch, and if you haven't played it, I highly suggest you do so, because it's really, really good. I actually wish I had gotten this game when I had my Sega Master System, but unfortunately, the video store I would go to as a kid, First Run Video in Auburn, which is no longer there, they did not have this game in their selection of Sega Master System games to buy and or rent. But now that I'm actually getting to play it, I'm very much surprised how much I'm actually enjoying myself with it, despite it being a, pretty simple RPG in the scope of things now, and, might be the quality of life improvements that have been added into this version, such as the auto mapping and, less encounters. And, just something about it just kept drawing me back to it until Tears of the Kingdom came out, and then, pretty much everything else I was playing just stopped. But I think a big part of the reason why I kept coming back to it was, of course, the music. The majority of it in this game is very catchy, and especially this theme right here. I haven't gotten tired of it yet, and that's because Takuhiko Uwabo, being a Sega classic composer with credits like Fantasy Zone, The Black Onyx, Space Harrier 2, Phantasy Star 1 and 2, Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse, and being part of the sound team that worked on Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles, with the majority of those being after Phantasy Star, excepting Fantasy Zone and The Black Onyx. The ones I didn't list here were majority of them were arcade ports to the Master System, which he did arrangements for. All of them using the SN76489 PSG sound chip, excepting Afterburner, which he actually did a version using the YM2413, being his first time. And so it's kind of surprising, like, it's the first time he did it, it was just a conversion, and then going on to do Phantasy Star right after that, which is his, first original work with the sound chip, he got it. So now before we move on, I have a little fun fact here. Phantasy Star was originally released in December 20th, 1987. So it was released 3 days after I was born, so I am older than Phantasy Star. Now, how I'm supposed to feel about that? I am not quite sure, but how this makes me feel. Surprisingly really good. It's actually the one part I look forward to in the loop. I don't know why. But enough musing. It's time to get on to our next track. We're sticking with the Sega Master System. This one here is a arcade to Sega Master System port, A Lone Fighter, from Galaxy Force, originally composed by Katsuhiro Hayashi and Koichi Namiki, arranged by Keisuke Sukahara. And that was A Lone Fighter from Galaxy Force, originally composed by Katsuhiro Hayashi and Koichi Namiki, and arranged by Keisuke Sukahara. And this track right here is quite something, ain't it, folks? Because if you're familiar with the arcade version, it's really bombastic, really big, sampled bass, like slap bass. The percussion is just all over the place. And then to take it and turn it into like reduced FM, and it's kind of muted, but I think, Koichi did a really good job, especially knowing that he used only 3 of the 15 available patches. The acoustic bass for the bass, harpsichord for all the kind of high tinny bits, and then the synthesizer for the main leads. So take this into consideration. He took an 8-channel 4-up FM and at least 2 PCM, sample channels, reduced it down to 5 channels of, budget FM, like only 2-op, and presets at that, with, preset percussion. And he also did the same thing for the PSG version, turning it into 3 channels of square waves and 1 noise. And that's really impressive as well. I would highly recommend you go check out both of these soundtracks because just the work he did to convert them is amazing, especially the PSG version is just really surprisingly well done. So now to give you a quick rundown of what he's done, so you could also go check that out. He did Cyborg Hunter in 1988, Shadow Dancer, Dark Wizard, a few 18-wheeler games, Virtua Fighter 4 Evolution, Shenmue 2, Aero Elite, Sega Race TV, Afterburner Climax, Virtua Tennis 4, and then his latest credit is Soul Reverse in 2018. Alright, so moving on, I got a track here I'm really excited to share with you. And I was really surprised to find this a few months ago, too. So what this is the Labyrinth FM OPLL version, composed and arranged by Masaya Shiranaga. You just heard the Labyrinth FM OPLL version, composed and arranged by Masaya Shiranaga. And do note that I said arranged because this was an arrangement of a song that he originally composed back in 2002 on the NEC PC using the YM2608. And I have right here what he said on the YouTube video that he posted. I ported one song as an OPLL practice. It's still used very little, and I feel like I haven't been able to take full advantage of the numbers and characteristics of the sounds. It's quite difficult, but I'm going to practice a little bit from now on. And he notes on here that this was written on the MSX, and the output you're hearing is coming from MSX Play. So now, as I said, I was surprised to find this on their YouTube channel, a few months ago. Because, I was not expecting to see, them doing OPLL music, because majority of their music they do is on the NEC PC using the YM2608 or the YM2203. And their music was, unknowingly to me, my first exposure to music from the NEC PC, back in, 2007, 2008. I think I may have told this story before, but back in my very early FM journey, I found this site. It was all in Japanese, but it had all this really cool FM music on it, and all I could find was the name was the M.S, and then this really cool just picture of different sound modules and stuff. And I have carried music around with me ever since then, so we're getting close to 15 years here, and The Labyrinth being one of my favorite tracks of that collection. And then it would be 10 years later when I found out who M.S was, Masaya Shiranaga, through VGM Rips, because I found the Variable Geo2 soundtrack, and there was somebody credited Masaya Shiranaga, and one of the songs on that soundtrack sounded very familiar, so I decided to look that name up and just kept searching and digging until I found this video uploaded of a music disc, which featured music by this Masaya Shiranaga. And sure enough, that song was one of the songs from that collection I had found back in 2007. And then a few years later, I would discover their SoundCloud under MS Mayonnaise. And then it wouldn't be until this year, when I was doing my research for this year's Masters of EGM, that I found out that they had a label called Megafeps, which is what their YouTube channel is, which is how I found this gem that you're hearing right now. All that to say that I really love Masaya Shiranaga's music, and I love this song, The Labyrinth, and to find an OPLL version of it is just, all the more sweeter. And just for being a practice track, he did a magnificent job. I mean, listen to this right here. That slide right there. What? I don't know. It's just the patch switching and everything. And then, of course, they're using the AY chip that's part of the MSX as well, which is kind of hard not to do when you're doing OPLL music on the MSX. But now you may be wondering, who is Masaya Shiranaga? Why haven't you heard of them before? Well, they only have one game credit, that being on Variable Geo2, Bout of the Kabbalistic God. And this is with a slew of other composers. Largely what he's worked on are music discs for the NEC PC, as well as like indie doujin albums alongside Kemul, which is that Masters of VGM connection, because I did a focus on Takahiro Yonemura, aka Kemul. Yeah, of these doujin albums, according to VGMDB, the first one that he's credited in is Unison Label Sound Collection Volume 1 Voltage from 1994. And then the latest credit in VGMDB is from 2021, The Old Fantasia, which was released under MS's Megafeps label. And with that, I'm just going to say, go listen to MS's music. It's all amazing. You can find it on MS Mayonnaise on SoundCloud and Megafeps on YouTube. I'll be linking both in the show notes. And yeah, he deserves all the love that you can give him. Truly, he does. And this will definitely not be the last time that his music shows up on the show. And now we're going to get into some arcade goodness with Sky Adventure. The track is called Act 3, and it was composed by Yuka Watanabe. That was Act 3 from Sky Adventure, composed by Yuka Watanabe. So one interesting thing I want to note about this arcade board is that it featured not just the YM2413, but also the YM2203, also called the OPN. And it was used for sound effects, not music at all, which is, kind of a funny thing. But I guess that's how ADK/Alpha do. And Yuka Watanabe. This soundtrack that she did, it's kind of all over the place. This one is probably the smoothest of them. Just really nice use of the patches. And, yeah, I gotta say, I like this part coming up right here. Just really cool, kind of slightly echoed arpeggios. Nice. So Yuka Watanabe was set as the lead composer for ADK starting in 1987 with the game Time Soldiers. And then going down the list, we got Sky Soldiers, Gang Wars, Magician Lord, Crossed Swords, the World Heroes series, so World Heroes 1, 2, and Perfect, Ninja Masters, Twinkle Star Sprites, and the last credit is Beastbusters' Second Nightmare in 1998. It would be if I hadn't found a second page for Yuka Watanabe that has a picture of someone that looks like the Yuka Watanabe I'm talking about here. So, starting in 2004, we got Rumble Roses, then Castlevania, Curse of Darkness, Castlevania, Harmony of Darkness, Ashura's Wrath, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle, Naruto Shippuden, Ultimate Ninja Storm 3, and then the latest credit is Pokemon Masters in 2019 on the iPhone. And the last few of these were as sound programmer or sound director. Alright, so I feel like I've been putting it up long enough. It's time to talk about the YM2413, known as the OPLL. And you may be wondering, why is it called the OPLL? Well, that's because it is a reduced version of the YM3812, which is called the OPL2. So, OPL2, go to OPLL, Yeah, I don't know, it works, right? So the YM3812 was a 2-operator, 9-channel sound chip, and with it you could create all the sounds you wanted within the restrictions of those 2 operators. And so what Yamaha did with the YM2413 is basically take that, cut out the ability to create sounds, and just created preset sounds. So you have like 15 and then 5 rhythm tones. So a kick, snare, hi-hat, ride, and tom. Though it does have 1 channel available for custom sounds, though it's very stripped down compared to what the OPL2 is. Though the cool thing is that you can have polyphony going of the custom patch, but you can't have different custom patches playing at once. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. I'm telling you about the custom patches before I told you about the actual 15 presets. So what those are violin, guitar, piano, flute, clarinet, oboe, trumpet, organ, horn, synthesizer, harpsichord, vibraphone, synthesizer bass, acoustic bass, and electric guitar. And then again, the rhythm tones are bass, snare, hi-hat, top cymbal, not ride, and tom. So these preset patches, though they can sound cheesy on their own, but when in the right hands, they can sound really damn good, as evidenced by the music that you've heard so far. Yeah, so I must note here that the presets cannot be modified in any way. So now as you can imagine, that being this a very cut-back FM sound chip, it was used in keyboards, very budget-friendly keyboards. And just to name a few of them off, we got the PSS 170, the SHS 10, the HSS 200, and the PSR 6. All of these made by Yamaha during the mid-late 80s. So, and then of course it became a additional sound unit for the Sega Mark III, and then would be built into the Sega Master System. But where it truly thrived was in the MSX computers. And this was in the form of a sound expansion cartridge, though it was built into some models of the MSX2, 2 Plus, and Turbo R. And I don't think I can understate how much love this sound chip got on the MSX. And there's just some amazing music made with this sound chip on the MSX. And, with the combination of the AY chip, oh man, it's beauty. But maybe a good point for me to remember to tell you that, much like the other chips in the OPL family, that this one has the ability to have like 2 different modes. So there's melodic mode where you can use all 9 channels for just pure sound, or the rhythm mode, which is where you have 5 channels for, melodic stuff, and then 3 channels set aside for all the rhythm sounds. Pretty neat, huh? So one last thing I could tell you about this is that this variation has variations. How about that? Most of them are, register and pinout differences. Some of them are lower power modes, and some of them have just completely different patches. The most interesting of note is the Yamaha DS1001, also known as the Konami VRC7. And one of the main differences on this is that it only has 6 channels available, though if you crack into it and get into the debug mode, there's 9. And the presets, though majority of them are named about the same, they sound very different. They have a much more kind of like softer, warmer tone, if that makes sense. I mean, if you've listened to Lagrange Point's soundtrack, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't listened to it, do yourself a favor and go listen to it. Please, it's an amazing soundtrack. It's beautiful. Good God, I've been talking at you for about 2 minutes now. It's time to get into more music here. And it would be an absolute crime for not featuring anything from Micro Cabin. So up next I got for you, Bridge in the Sky from Zack 2, composed by Takashi Sakurai and Tadahiro Nitta. and that was Bridge in the Sky from Zack 2, composed by Takashi Sakurai and Tadahiro Nitta. And this was developed by Microcabin for the MSX too. And the Microcabin sound team, usually helmed by Tadahiro Nitta, really knew how to squeeze like the best out of this sound chip. My first encounter with their music was through the game Illusion City, which I had emulated on Blue MSX way back in the day. And my mind was kind of blown because I did not know what I was hearing, and then it would be later on that I would learn that it was the YM2413, the same sound chip that was in my Sega Master System, and these did not sound the same. And so it would be some years later until I finally sat myself down and actually listened to it, and found out that yes, in fact, they are the same exact sound chip, the same exact sounds. It's just that somehow the sound team was able to make it sound so much different and better than what I was hearing on the Sega Master System. And one of the things that really puzzled me until a couple years ago was their punchy snare. It just didn't sound like the usual snare that comes with the YM2413, and it was because they were using both the preset snare patch alongside the AY chip to get a pulse and a noise snare going. And I think that was the biggest thing that kind of really confused me at first, was the fact that they were using not only the OPLL but the AY chip as well. So somehow Tadahiro Nitta and the rest of the Microcabin sound team just mastered combining these two together and created some of the best music that you can find on the MSX, at least for commercially released games. And I would go far as to even say that it is better than the music in games developed by Konami for the MSX. Now, of these two composers, I'm going to start with Takashi Sakurai, because he has the least that I could find on him. The only two games on Microcabin that I found that he did is Frey and Zack 2, and then I found another Takashi Sakurai credit in Moby Games. I'm not sure if the same guy. He's a recording engineer for Kingdom Hearts 3D, and Kingdom Hearts 1.5 Remix. So if anybody who's listening happens to know more about Takashi Sakurai, if he's done more with Microcabin, or if this is the same guy who did the Kingdom Hearts, please let me know. I would love to know. And so now this brings us to Tadahiro Nitta, who is one of the founding members of Microcabin, and assumed the role of their lead composer. And this guy has quite a number of titles under his belt. And I have gone over his credits before in a previous episode, but I'll give you some of the highlights. So he did the MSX conversion of Final Fantasy in '89, Zack's The Art of Visual Stage, Illusion City, Dragon Half, Princess Maker 2, and then the first time we'd actually hear him in the States is Shenmue. He was part of that sound team. And then his latest game credits are Shenmue 1 and 2, the Windows release in 2018, and Midnight School Walk, released in 2022 on Steam. But that's not all. He started a Bandcamp back in 2022, which is how I found Midnight School Walk. And he seems to be pretty consistent with his releases since he started this page. Some of them are albums called Oasis and Tuwop. He has his latest one that he released just this month, on August 4th, is Raging Blitz original soundtrack, which is just this crazy experimental. It's a combination of the AY chip and the OPLL, and just making sounds I could not imagine that these two were capable of. So yeah, definitely check that out. I'll be linking it in the show notes. And that's one of the coolest things about these computers. They're still being used by people today to make some really awesome music. And actually, this next two songs I'm going to be featuring are just that case in point, recent releases made on the hardware. So the next song I got for you here is coming from a fellow by the name of John Hasink, who's been part of the MSX indie scene since the mid-90s. So he's been making software and music for this computer for nearly 30 years now. So what I'm going to play for you here is Opening Tutorial Stage for Crisis Core, composed and arranged by John Hasink. that was opening/tutorial stage OPLL plus PSG version from Core Crisis, composed and arranged by John Hsink. And so this song was originally written back in 2009 for the AY38910 chip on the MSX, and then John rearranged it for the OPLL plus the PSG in 2021. And this was made in Trilo Tracker, which is a music tracker software that runs on MSX. So now I actually have information straight from John about this game, Core Crisis. It's a shoot 'em up, and its gameplay is kind of a mix between Zanak and Ladok, with some elements of Mega Man, whereas you collect weapons from boss enemies, and you use them to exploit weaknesses of other enemies, and a little bit of X-Dash in there because they also influence the terrain. And so now this song takes place during the opening/tutorial stage, where you're flying over this huge futuristic city, which is under enemy assault. And this song is just perfect for that type of scene because, it's just really intense, gets your blood pumping, and again, I did not know that the YM2413 could sound like this. And remember that these are all the same presets that you've been hearing in the other songs. It's just that the way how he combines them together and just uses them is just kind of mind-blowing. And that percussion there, he's using that micro cabin trick where he's doing the PSG and the FM percussion. And hold up, I like this part right here. Damn, just the way how he kind of drops out some of the grindy bits and just kind of makes it feel muted and then brings that grindy bits back in. It's just mighty fine. As far as I'm concerned, this guy is a master with the OPLL. And, his arrangements are definitely a testament to that because the first one that really caught my attention of his was one he did of the opening from Chrono Cross. And that is beautiful. I mean, it was just amazing. And I highly encourage you to go check it out. Just look up, John Hsink, Chrono Cross. You'll not regret it. I'm going to definitely be playing it on the show at some point in the future. So now what can I tell you about John himself? Well, thanks to the MSX.org wiki, I can do just that. So he is a Dutch musician that has been involved with the MSX scene since 1995. And he is, largely a composer, but he has done some coding and graphic design. And some of the groups that he's been involved with are BitVision, Byte Reactor, Imanok, Near Dark, Pixanga Software, and Trilobyte, which this last company are the ones that developed the Trilo Tracker that John Hsink has used to make this song. So now John has composed music for quite a number of titles here. The first few I'm going to name off are just software, so Data Magazine, Guide Through Game World 2, and Near Dark 2.5. And then starting in 1998, we have his first game credit, The Lost World, followed by Realms of Adventure from 2000, and then their Soul Grinder 2005 and Leda Micro 2008, both of them unreleased, Deep Dungeon Adventure in 2008, Pango in 2010, Zombie Incident in 2011, Dark in 2012, Shmup in 2013, Uridium, Mr. Balloon, and Muffy's Tutankhamun in 2014, Dutch Moonsound Veterans in 2015, Rune Monster in Sector 88, and Codename Intruder in 2016, Tina's Adventure Island, Green Gravity Guy, and Myths and Dragons in 2017, The Sorrow of Godland Tour, and Burn Us EXP in 2018, Shmup Kai in 2020, and then Metal Dragon in 2021. And so now the coolest fact about all these games, excepting the two that were unreleased, they had physical releases. Actually, they were all put on cartridges. They had boxes, manuals, just art, the whole works, everything. And that's pretty damn cool. And there's actually one more game credit here, and that is for Angelic Warrior Deva, which John actually contributed a couple of songs to. He was originally going to be the composer for this game, but then got really busy with other projects. And so the creator, Robert Vroimis, ended up doing all the music for it. And there's actually an episode about this game on Pixelated Audio. And it's a really good listen. Go check it out. But even more so, you should go check out John's YouTube page where he has just posts so much music, so much amazing music. I'll be linking that in the show notes. So now I hope you're ready for another banger here because it's just banger after banger. This next track is a definite tonal shift, and it's coming from someone that most chiptune enthusiasts should be familiar with thanks to one particular chiptune. But you may be able to figure out by listening to this next song. So what I got here for you is Patch Slide Test number 00 from OPL Drive FM BIOS Little Selection by Kazuhiko Naruse, aka Naruto2413. That was Patch Slide Test number 00 from OPL Drive FM BIOS Little Selection by Katsuhiko Naruse, aka Naruto2413. And if you haven't been able to figure it out by now, or you already know, I'm going to tell you anyway, that one chiptune I was referring to was Artificial Intelligence Bomb, a delightful .nsf that, is just so beloved that so many people have done covers of it, and there's actually an entire album just dedicated to covers of this song by various artists released by Staff Circ. But discussion on that is for another day. We're here to talk about the YM2413 and the song that was made with this by a man who uses the same numbers in his alias. And good God, is this amazing. Just how he's really able to get this really high energy and just be able to switch between all the patches. But the one thing that really perks my ear up is just that bass line and the way how he's using that acoustic bass patch, just kind of giving it that nice little gunky kind of slap sound. Listening back to it, it sounds like he might be doing some note delay on there, but it could be that he's also doing a short cutoff on another patch just before the acoustic bass kicks in. But yeah, to find out, I may just have to ask him directly. And so, this could be something that I could try to figure out on my own on Deflamask, or this could be a quirk that is possible with the driver that he's using, which is the OPL drive that is built directly into the FM BIOS of the MSX. And I'll read you this from the album description, is that, so the OPL DRV is a very simple sound driver, so its style is called the elementary YM2413. And one thing to note about this driver is that it's OPLL only, so no PSG shenanigans. And yes, this song, plus all the other songs in the album, are just phenomenal. And I will be linking it in the show notes, and I will highly encourage you to go listen to it, and then possibly even purchase it. It's only $5. But not only do you get the songs, but you also get an MSX disc image, which you can load into an MSX emulator and play that way. Or, if you have it, load it onto an actual disc and then put it into an actual MSX to listen through hardware. So now, Naruto2413, Katsuhiko Naruse. He has been working with the MSX since the early 90s, primarily composing music, of course. But not just the OPLL, but also using the AY chip, the Konami SCC, as well as Moon Sound, which is the OPL4, and it is a monster of a sound chip. And you can actually go check this out on VGM Rips, the Moon Driver demo. But he hasn't kept himself limited to the MSX. No, he's done stuff for the NEC PC, done a number of .nsfs, the Artificial Intelligence Bomb, for example. Hell, even doing music for some mobile phone stuff with the MA2 and MA3 in SMAF format, back in the early to mid-2000s when the cell phones had little FM sound chips in them. But all I have to go off of is his Bandcamp and what he shared on that. So the earliest one I see is one called Shining Crystal, which was a JRPG on the MSX2, which this was in 1995. And then in 1997, we have Neko Shooters, which on Bandcamp he has the Sound Canvas 55 version. And then in 2000, we have Neko Taiyaki and Toru Try, which on Bandcamp he has the Yamaha Mu 100 version. And then we have Reliance from 2003 using the YM2608B. And then a couple more here, we have the iOS game Rats and Busters, which was made using the LSG chiptune software. And then we have Axe, Bow, and Staff, which was all composed with Famicom, and this was a Steam release in 2016. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about my personal history with his music. So about 2008 or so, I discovered the 2A03archive.org, which was just this huge collection of .nsfs, both original and covers. And within the original ones, I found the Artificial Intelligence Bomb, which, just kind of blew my mind because just like I said, the composition on that and just everything about it was amazing. And then I wouldn't really encounter his music again until about 2012 with Soundshock FM Funk Terror and his song Machine Wave, which he did in collaboration with Aya Futosuke. And then found his SoundCloud shortly thereafter and just has been kind of keeping track of him since then. And then, it was really exciting to see him show up in Soundshock FM Funk Nirvana in 2017. With Modulation to Move the Mind, which he did in collaboration with vocalist Aya Futosuke once more, as well as Koichi, who was the programmer for the Moondrive demo. And that's about all I got for you. One thing I'll note here is that I was not originally intending to play John Hissing's track alongside Kazuhiko's here, but I find it really fascinating just to have these two guys that have been working with the MSX for about the same amount of time in two different regions of the world, and just developing their own styles of music and having their own different sensibilities, while using the same exact computer and the same exact sound chip, which is usually not the case when it comes to Western computer music versus Japanese computer music, because with the Western side you usually have ZX Spectrum or the Commodore computers, and then in Japan you usually have NEC or Sharp X68K. But with the MSX, it was all over the place. Spain, parts of Europe, the Netherlands, Japan. Really cool to hear this common thing being used in these two very different places. And there you have it, my very strange focus on this simple sound chip, the YM2413 OPLL. Again, it is a budget sound chip, but for that being that, it is capable of so much when in the right hands. And, me personally I have started writing some songs with it in Deflamask, which is, what I currently am using. And it's been pretty fun, kind of figuring out all the different things that I can do. I've actually been using the PSG, the SN76489 for percussion, which is really fun. And then just trying to use all the 9 available channels or melodic mode. But only time will tell if I'll actually, get to writing anything on it. But, yep. Hey, thank you for coming into VG Emporium and listening to this nearly hour-long, just rambling focus on a little tiny sound chip. And if you enjoyed what you heard, definitely give it a follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon, Audible if you use those. You can also find it on vgemporium.wordpress.com where, you'll find all the episodes and the show notes and the links to everything, where you can find it, as well as the, Twitter and Instagram accounts, as well as a Discord if you're interested in that. And then there's also the email, vgemporium@gmail.com. So if you have a suggestion, some feedback, or if you have a song requests, or special orders as I call them, you could just send it right on that way. And then you can find myself, Rage Cage, on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, as well as SoundCloud, where I have all of my original music, and, keep your ear open for any new OPLL stuff. No guarantees, though. So now, how am I going to close this out? Well, I've made mention to one game in particular a couple times. That would be Alex Kidd and the Lost Stars, and just how cheesy it sounds. And even more so compared to all these songs I just featured today. So I'll be playing out with Ending from Alex Kidd and the Lost Stars, composed by Hiroshi Miyauchi.